Hello, hello, and welcome to the second half of season 5. I can't believe that we're already halfway through the year. My name is Debbie Heiser. I help entrepreneurs make a lot of money doing what they love without sacrificing what's important to them. I feel an urgency to help people let go of past messaging so that they can lead a lit up life. And with that, I want to again welcome you. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the show.
Straight from the corners of my mind is where I find my sanity. It's a place, another land, another time.
Hey there, I wanted to pop in really quick before you listen to this week's episode and tell you about two quick, exciting opportunities that I have going on. I have a few openings as a private client, and also coming up on Thursday, October 26th through Saturday, October 28th in beautiful Sandpoint, I am holding a women's business retreat. You can find that out on the website under programs, retreats to find out more, and also book a consult for a private client. Hope to see you. Hello, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Lead Your Life with Debbie Heiser. I am excited today to introduce you to Sonya Shelton. And as you all know, who have been listeners, you know I like for them to introduce themselves in their professional manner, and I'll ask Sonya to do the same thing. Sonya and I met because there is this thing out there that people look to go on other people's podcasts. And part of that is to help us share our message. And I'm always thankful for that, particularly when people line up and are in congruency with what the Lead Your Life team is doing and what we're trying to do as an impact in the world. And Sonya is one of those people. And so I'm going to have Sonya introduce herself, and then we're going to just have a conversation about how we lead a lit up life. So Sonya, introduce yourself to our listeners, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm really excited for our conversation. So I'm Sonya Shelton, the founder and CEO of Executive Leadership Consulting, which I started in 2007, because I'm really passionate about people being fulfilled at work and being able to, we have these circles of influence, right? When we spend most of our time at work. And so when people are fulfilled at work, that connects to how they show up with their family and friends. That circles out to how they show up in their community. So I'm super passionate about that. And I believe that starts with leadership. And so I wrote a book a number of years ago called You're an Executive, but Are You a Leader? Was #1 on Amazon, and really focus on leadership specifically for executives and business owners, but also anybody who wants to lead, because no matter what position you're in, you can show up as a leader.
Fantastic. Sonya, thank you. And when you think about those circle of influences, and you named 3 in particular, what do you find when you're working with clients? What are the areas? Well, I guess they probably focus on all 3, but what are the areas that you focus on and help them so that they feel like they're in the right vehicle, let's say, right? Like, I don't like to say we're screeching into the pearly gates, but that they feel like they're in the right vehicle and doing what they feel called to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So we completely agree with Simon Sinek, who wrote the book Start With Why. And so we do the same. So we start with why. Why do you do what you do? And sometimes people think they know their why, but they don't quite have it. So like they'll say, oh, my why is my family, or my why is because I want to have an impact. I want to change the world, or my why is my faith, right? And we say those are who's and what's, not necessarily your why. Your why is really what motivates you. It came before you had a family, before you had a job or a career, right? Like it came before all of that. It's what really drives you. And so that's where we start, with starting with why. And then we extend that to say, okay, so once you know your why, what's your how? And your how is how you bring that why to life, how you internally process information. And then the third piece is your what. So what can others expect from you? And we call all this the why connection. And we help our clients first understand themselves, of why they do what they do, how they deliver on that, and then what others can expect. And then we use that to connect to their purpose. Yeah. So that's another thing that's a misconception, where sometimes people think, oh, if I know my why, then that's my purpose. Not necessarily, right? Yeah, your why is what motivates you and can help you find your purpose. but your purpose might also change, right? As you grow and evolve, you might discover, oh yeah, I really like this, but I'm going to add this piece, or this piece actually led me to something else that I love even more, right? And so your purpose can evolve, but your why stays stable.
Yeah. And Sonya, let's talk about that, because when I think about purpose, like, I'm going to ask you, what do you feel like your purpose is?
I think I talked a little bit about it in my introduction. Is I really am passionate about my why is to contribute to the success of others, to help other people be successful, and that's my success. That's what gets me going. That's what motivates me. But my purpose is really about fulfilling, helping people feel fulfilled at work, and this intersection between a company's culture and its business strategy, right? So I think there's a lot of companies that maybe focus a little bit too far on one or the other, right? Like they're so focused on the business strategy that the culture suffers, or they focus so much on the culture that the business suffers. And so it's really about those two working in alignment, so that I disagree with the Peter Drucker quote that culture eats strategy for breakfast. I think they have to have breakfast together. It's not
That's a
one
great way to put that.
right. So it is really having, how can you can have a very successful company and a very successful and fulfilling culture at the same time. And I think both are important.
Yeah. And so, Sonya, I want to, we'll go back to the purpose and the culture mixture within an organization here in a second. When you talk about your purpose and what you're doing to help other people fulfill, what does that do for you? What's the feeling that comes with that?
It lights me up. To use your word, right? Like it is, I and it's because my why is to contribute to other people's success. When I don't see that I'm making an impact, when I'm working with a client that doesn't want to change, I'm out, right? Like I have to pull myself out of the situation, because then I'm not living in my purpose. If they don't want to change and they're not coachable, then neither of us can be successful. And I actually have fired clients because of that. And then on the flip side, how it makes me feel is at Executive Leadership Consulting, our number one value is partnership, right? So I really get invested in our clients and their success, and I see their success as my success. And so when they're successful with something, I celebrate too, like it's mine, right? Even though they did it, right? So yeah, it's I love what I do, and I think like life is short, and it's important to find something that you love that much.
Yeah. And thank you for going there with me, because one of the things that I find with my clients, and I don't know if you find this too, my guess would be yes, is that we come up with our whys, we come up with our purpose. Like I use 4 words that I know if I'm doing one of those 4 things, I'm happy. If I'm doing all 4, I am lit up. Like it is energizing to me. And so I help people and try to help people kind of connect in with the feeling, because a lot of times, and this is where I was going, like you probably find this too, people struggle with this idea of purpose. And we make things I'm going to say, I make things much harder than they need to be at times, and much more difficult and complex, when in fact, it's really about listening to your body too. And when you feel it, you feel it. And so thank you for going with me there. So you did mention earlier when we were talking, well, right now too, you said life is too short to not do something that you love to do. And part of this, before we started recording, what some of you didn't hear was we were talking a little bit about Sonya's background, and she's like, it was the last job I'll ever have. And we laughed because we both understand that. But I want to talk about that. Tell us a little bit about your history, because you've had some executive experience. You've had some experience in corporations that then allows you to take what you've learned and help other people in those situations. So give us a little background as far as really tactically, where did you work? What did you learn from those organizations?
Yes, absolutely. I think the common theme through my entire career has been leadership. So I grew up in a household with entrepreneur parents that owned a business, and all of the toughest conversations happened at the dinner table. and usually had to do with people, right? Like conversations they didn't want to have in the office ended up happening at home. And I kind of learned a lot through some of those conversations. And I didn't really realize that until I got older, how much I did learn from that experience. But what I noticed was it didn't matter where I started in a job, I was immediately elevated into a leadership position. And so when you're talking about the last job I'll ever have, I was the head of internal communications at the Walt Disney Company globally, which is amazing because it's known for its fantastic culture. But I was there at a time when nobody in my position had experienced this, and nobody in that position will ever experience it again. And we were having a member of the Disney family, Roy Disney, leading a shareholder revolt against our CEO at the time, Michael Eisner. And so it was basically like a company going through a divorce, basically,
Wow.
somebody who's part of the Disney family trying to get rid of our CEO. And at the same time, it's all over the media, firing shots at each other, right? And it really did feel like the company was going through a divorce. Now imagine I'm the head of internal communications being told, remind people why it's great to work for the company, why they should be focused and productive despite all of this drama that's happening outside, right? And it was really stressful, and it was not a great environment to work in. And I really realized the impact to me as a leader. And it created a lot of empathy in me for leaders and whatever they're going through, because sometimes we can know better, but we get impacted by our environment. And so until my team told me what was happening, I was taking what was happening to me and I was passing it on to them. And then once they gave me the feedback of, we can't keep up with you, things are crazy, right? And I said, well, I can be in this big company. And this goes back to what I was talking about earlier. Like, it doesn't matter what position you have, you can show up as a leader, right? So I was working in this big company, but I said, nope, I'm going to create a bubble around my team. And we're going to have a team culture that has nothing to do with the company culture. And we're going to decide what it's like to work together, right? And even though the chaos was happening and all the craziness was happening around us, we shifted how we worked together and got through it as a team in a completely different way than anybody else in the company. So I really learned a lot from Disney on what to do well when it was going well. But I also learned a tremendous, I would say even more, from going through the challenging time of the shareholder revolt, because it gave me the empathy, and also nothing scares me when working with clients. Like I've never come across, I worked with a lot of different companies in a lot of tough situations, and nothing's been like that. Right. So
if you can make it through that, you can make it through anything. That's what I'm hearing.
Exactly.
Yeah, and Sonya, thank you for bringing that up, because it reminds me of when I was at Sprint, and then when I was at Citibank, I kind of did the same thing. We created a team culture within our team, and we had layers at Citibank. You have the training and development global team, but we created a culture within that, as well as a culture within our Kansas City site. And it was interesting because people would look to us about, like, what are you doing differently? Even when we closed down the training and department that had 30 employees, people stayed on until the end to do the work because we had built such a great, strong team of people. And so when you think about, like, the clients that you work with today, like, how do you help them build a culture within a bigger culture? Because it sounds like that comes naturally to both of us. And so then how do you help other people see how to do that if that's not something that just comes naturally to them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned that we start with why, and we have a model called Red Thread Leadership, where we look at first starting with the leader themselves. So what's your why? What is it that you're trying to do? What's your vision for yourself as a leader within this company? Maybe not in this company, right? And because if you don't start there, none of the other culture changes are going to happen, right? So because the behavior has to be aligned, right? And then we look at the team and we say, okay, so what's the team why? So I mentioned like what I did with my team at Disney. How do we work together? What are our values as a team? And then once we have those two things, then we can go out to yet another circle, which is the company. So what's the company purpose? And what is it internally and externally that is the same, that we're trying to, that what is our mission as a company? I prefer the word purpose to say, what are we really here to do that's going to get people lit up and passionate about what we do and why we do what we do.
Yeah.
And so we really look at, where are the gaps with the company to say, are you focused just on yourself as a leader? Are you focused on you're within a company and you don't have access to the company purpose, but you can work on your team, and we're going to create the same thing for the team. And then we take this purpose and we run it through everything that they do, right? So creating their vision, their processes, how they're structured, and their culture, which we call passion, to really make sure that purpose can come to life and can become a great place to work and a successful growing business as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Sonya. And as you were saying that, I was thinking, okay, yeah, the strategy, the vision and the strategy to me is more of the doing, right? Like, what is it that we're doing? What is the purpose? Why are we here? What does that look like? And then the values are really about who are we being, right?
Yeah.
Because you have to have the structure and the doing, and you have to have the flow, or the who are we being, and the creativity piece of that. And that kind of speaks volumes about making sure you have values set up too, as well as that strategy, because then the tactics and how you implement that are hopefully in congruency with the rest of the company, but you're able to build that culture within that team. So yeah, thank you for that. So I want to pick your brain just a little bit about, and I know some of it is things that we've probably already talked about. I haven't read your book. I have to be honest with you. I haven't had the chance yet to dig into that. I've got a stack of about 10 that I'm getting through. And I just actually started this little book, and it's little, like, here's my phone.
Oh my gosh.
Little, and it's called E2. And it's 9 do-it-yourself energy experiments that prove that your thoughts create your reality. So when I'm done with this one, I'll take a look at yours as well. But what I'd like to know is, if a reader picks up that book, what can they expect to learn from that? If they glean in all of the valuable wisdom that you have in that book, what is your hope for people after they finish reading that book?
So when I wrote the book, I really took a step back and said, what did I want as an executive, right? What is it that, how do I like to read? And if I and I think a challenge, especially, for training and development and coaching, is that change needs to be sustainable. So this goes back to my why, right? So if it's not actually creating a change, then I don't think it's successful. If people get it, they have ahas, and then they don't do anything, then I don't think that's successful. So I approach the book the same way. So it's 50 chapters. Each chapter, that sounds like a lot. It's a very small book.
Yeah.
Each chapter is 3 pages each. The first is a tip. The second one is a case study of a conglomeration of clients that have impacted these things so that I could maintain confidentiality. And the third is the coaching questions that I would ask you if you were having that issue, right? So
like a workbook kind of format a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you wanted to, you can read it cover to cover, and you would have, sort of the process of creating alignment in your organization, alignment with you as a leader. Or you could just look at the table of contents and say, this is what I'm dealing with today, and how can I implement this, right? So So I wanted it to be something that could live with a leader through whatever they're going through. And then also for those that are moving up in organizations, they get different leadership challenges as you move up in an organization. You might have more day-to-day challenges as a manager of day-to-day management, more strategic challenges as you move into the executive role. And so really made it something that people could come back to again and again as they go on their leadership journey.
Yeah, that's great. So it's like a living book where every time you move into something, it's a good idea to go back and go through that whole process. And so I know both of us have dealt with a lot of leaders moving in for their first time leadership role, moving into C-suite positions, executive position. So some of the tips that you're saying is making sure you understand, and as a servant leader follower, self-awareness is a big piece of that, and listening is like a core foundation of the 10 characteristics. And so really becoming and listening to yourself to understand your why, your purpose, and mapping that and seeing, because I also find when people interview, it's important to understand that and understand the company as well, to make sure, because you're interviewing the company as well, to make sure there's fluency, right? So having those, but then as people move into different positions, what would be your number one tip other than figuring out the why, the purpose of that team and the organization and the values? What would be your next step to say, this is the most important thing after you do those? And hopefully by then, as they're moving up in the company, they understand themselves well enough to know those things, but it might have to shift a little bit from a team culture and a team perspective. But what would be like, go do this? What would be that advice that you would give to someone?
Yeah, I would say that the number one thing is to always be focused on alignment, right?
Mhm.
So alignment to the vision of the company and purpose, like we talked about, but also alignment with different groups of stakeholders. So your team, are we aligned? Are we moving in the same direction? Do we have clarity? Does everybody have clarity on where we're going? And then are they in agreement with where we're going? Do they get it? Do they see their part of it? You also have peers that you're working with in an organization. And so whether that's a CEO and you have a board or you're an executive and you have other executives in other areas that you're working with, who are those most important people that you need to make sure for your team to be successful, they need to be aligned with you, and really looking at making sure that you're staying in communication with those people and connected with those people. And then you have, your leader, depending on, again, where you are in the organization. This could be your customers. If you're an entrepreneur, I look at, our clients are really our boss in a way, right? So, and so looking at what do they need and how can I help them be successful, and what is it that they need from me, and am I aligned with them and what they're trying to create, right? So really having this theme of alignment in everything that you're doing, to say what conversations do I need to have to make sure that we're all on the same page and moving in the same direction, and what conversations do we need to have if we're not.
Yeah. Okay, good. That's good stuff. Thank you. So Sonya, one last question. If I were to look at your playlist on your phone, whatever, if it's iTunes or Spotify, what would you say would be a song that would pop up and play right now if we did it?
It'd probably be my ringtone, which is Right Now by Van Halen.
Oh, fantastic. I love that. I love that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Okay, so if someone wants to reach out to you, they want to learn more about what you and your organization does, where would you send them?
So our website is executiveleader.com. So if you're interested in learning more about the Red Thread Leadership Model, there's a masterclass on there that's free. If you're interested in learning more about your why connection, there's information on that, on how you can dive into it and the tool that we use to discover your why. And then obviously there's a contact there, which can be forwarded to me. I'm happy to connect with anybody.
Fantastic. Sonya, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for being on the show. And with that, folks, it's a wrap. We'll see you next week. Everybody have a great one. Thanks so much for listening. The song Ride is co-written and sung by Miss Jackie Wilson and her collaborators Tyler Banks, David DJ Lee, and Chris Renee. And a huge shout out to them for allowing us to use this perfect song. Everyone have a fabulous week, and I'll talk to you next week.